Hi, I'm Nicole Vogelsinger of Wildboho. Welcome back to the Needles Out Embroidery Challenge. I'm really excited because so many of you are taking part in this challenge and sharing fabrics with me, letting me know how excited you are about it. I really love that. Keep finding those fabrics. It is not too late to get started. I'm going to do a quick recap of what we've done in the other videos, but they are all available. You can start at any point. I want to show you two new stitches. So it's another video with two stitches, but I'm also going to talk about hoop guts. I've got some hoops here that we are going to talk about in depth a little bit. And I'm going to show you hoop guts and why I think you should be proud of them and rock those hoop guts. I'm also going to be sharing another thread that I love to use. And I'm going to be talking about different techniques where we can add beads to our stitches. Let's get started with a quick recap. So again, a quick recap. We have covered the back stitch, did the chain stitch, we also did the Hungarian braided chain, and today we're going to be working on the feather stitch and the maidenhair stitch. So on the piece that I'm working on, we have already done the back stitch and the back stitch with sequins. We have worked the chain stitch and added beads to that, and then also the Hungarian braided chain. I wanted to touch on hoop guts today. So if you have my book, you'll have noticed that the front of the book is the front of this hoop, and then the back of the book is the hoop guts of the same hoop. So it's a close-up of the hoop guts, and you can feel, my favorite part is you can actually feel the threads that are on the back of the hoop. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I do show my hoop guts when I teach workshops in person. I am not shy about sharing the back of your hoop and letting you know that you should rock those hoop guts. I am going to focus on finishing stitches today. We talk about the stitches that we're moving on to. So I thought it would be only fair to show you what the back of my hoops generally look like. So for this one, here is the front of this hoop. Lots of texture. I'll move this one out of the way so you can see. This one was a hoop that still I left the Woolworths price tag on too for $1. A really good deal, and I would love to be able to find deals like that on hoops nowadays. Front of the hoop, lots of texture, lots going on. And then on the back, here are my hoop guts. Now, I leave my hoop guts exposed like this, and I definitely promote the rocking of hoop guts, not being embarrassed by them, embracing them. You have spent a lot of time, or by the end of a stitching project, you will have spent a lot of time with your project. And I think this is beautiful. There is beauty in all of the threads and the kind of mess that's behind a beautiful hoop like this. There's just as much beauty in the back. I do not cover this up. I like to be able to flip it over and look at the threads that I use, look at the different textures that I've included. And so this is how I finish my hoops. I'm also going to be talking about finishing stitches today in the project that we're currently working on. And here's one more simple applique hoop, and I will flip it over to show the hoop guts of this one. I love that on the hoop guts of this, you can absolutely tell what has been stitched. You can see the figures. This is one of my favorite hoops from a previous book. Just give you a close-up of their hair because their hair is amazing. I've left the hoop guts exposed so you can see that it was two different fabrics I combined. There's applique. There's not tons going on. The hoop isn't super heavy, but I do leave these exposed so that I can flip it over and check it out at any time. And then one more peek at this one. This is the hoop that inspired the cover. Original fabric for this is by Anna Maria Horner. You can check this out. I believe this fabric, I can't remember the name of it, but I do believe it is still a fabric that you can find. And again, there are my hoop guts. So now that I've showed you what the back of a few of my hoops looked like, let's get started on today's project, and I'm going to talk a little bit about finishing stitches today too. So thank you for all of your questions that you've been leaving in the comments or sending me emails. I was asked what sort of pen or pencil, what do I use to transfer lines onto fabric? These are two of my favorite. I'll start with this one. This is the Clover Water Erasable Marker. It is a thick marker and you can see the line right here. This is great for, this is kind of my go-to for any fabric that I use, except for a darker fabric like this. Any sort of light fabric, I use this. Either my stitches will cover up the lines, or I just take a little Q-tip with some water and I just wash the lines away, and no problem, easy to get rid of the lines. I like the thickness of this one, especially when transferring a really detailed pattern. It really gets all of the lines that you need to transfer. This is my other favorite go-to. This is also by Clover, the water soluble pencil. So this one you're going to see me use today on this darker fabric. They have this in white, pink, and blue, so it kind of covers all of your bases with whatever fabrics you're going to use. This one also, and again I'll show you, it kind of like marks just like that, and it's kind of one that you can brush away the marks like that, or it also goes away with water. I also find that when I'm stitching with it, the stitches cover over both of these really easily, and if it's a super delicate design, then I will have to wash the marks away, but usually I'm covering them up with so many other things that I don't have to worry about that. I also use these a lot, so you can see I even keep the tiny little pencil stubs. They're great to just cart around. You can just use a regular pencil sharpener to sharpen them. Keeping the sharpness of the point really does help in transferring the design. So keep those great questions coming. If I don't cover it in the comments, then I will try to add it to a video. So the first stitch that I want to show you is the feather stitch, and I'm actually going to demonstrate it on this piece of fabric and then show you how it applies to my current work in progress. This is a stitch that you will work from top to bottom, and although I'm going to be drawing a line while I'm showing you the practice stitches, I don't generally do that on my actual piece, but this is just to help you visualize as I'm talking through this stitch. I'm using a size 8 pearl cotton. This is the Eleganza pearl cotton. And I'm also going to show you how to add beads to this stitch. So we're going to stitch it with and without beads. I'm bringing my needle up at the top of this line, and then I pull my thread through. Now, I'm going to be working on the right and on the left of the line, and we're going to be alternating back and forth. So I'm taking my needle down. As I take it down, it's not exactly even with the top of this stitch. I'm kind of going down just a little bit and off to the side. And I'm not going to pull my thread all the way through. My thumb is here to catch that thread. And now I'm bringing my needle up in the middle on that line again. And now my thread is anchored. And so I'm going to take it down on the other side. Now these lines, each time I take my needle down, it's not exactly even with the stitch that I previously did. I'm kind of just shifting it down barely noticeably as I work my way down the line. So I'm just kind of alternating, not pulling my thread all the way through. My thumb catches it, and I bring my needle up in the middle on that line, just like that. Now, as you are stitching this, you can vary the length of your stitches. You can make shorter stitches like this. So instead of bringing my needle down further, I can bring it, I'll show you, I'll bring it nice and close. So I'm taking it off to the side, catching it with my thumb, and just doing like small stitches on the line. And so you'll find different ways that you can vary the look of this. To add a bead to this one, you have a few options. So when your thread and needle are up, that's when you want to add the bead. So this is a size 6 bead. It's a larger bead, and I'm using this mainly so that you can see what a bead will look like with this stitch. So when your needle is up above the fabric, you're going to add your bead, and you're going to go to stitch the next stitch just like normal. So bringing my needle up in the center on that line. Now, before I pull my thread tight, I need to make a decision. Do I want my bead to be over here on the little wing of the feather stitch, or do I want it to be in the center of this line? You can maneuver the bead just by lifting your thread up that's attached to the needle. Now, the only thing is, if I want my beads to all be on the little wings of these stitches, you can see there's some movement there. So the way that I remedy this is I'll stitch all my beads on, and then I'll come back with another thread, either the same thread that I'm using or a thinner thread, and I will just do tiny little stitches. I'll take this. I'll do tiny little stitches just to keep the bead in that spot. If you don't mind if it goes back and forth and moves around, then you don't have to worry about that step. But also, I think it's kind of nice to stitch a row of beads that all fall on the center line. So I will do that too. So that just gives you a few varieties of how to work your stitches. So I want to show you how to finish this stitch. I'm just going to do one more stitch. So you're done working your feather stitch, and here's your needle and thread. The way that you finish it is you're just going to take it down on the other side of that stitch to just anchor it now. And you can see it's nice and anchored. When I finish my stitches, if I don't have beads on them and it's just threads, I will just run my needle and thread through a few of the stitches, back up through the stitches, and then I'll trim it off. Anytime I'm using beads, I always tie knots just to give my stitches a little bit of security, and I just tie little knots in the thread, 1 or 2, just like that. And then I trim off my thread, leaving it looking just like that. So that's how I finish all of my stitches when I'm done a row or when I've run out of thread and want to start again. Feather stitch is my favorite of the meandering stitches, and I want to show you how you can make this stitch look so completely different. So I'm going to draw another line, just another center line, and I'm going to start my feather stitch the same exact way. So for this stitch, we were going just back and forth from the left to the right. This time, I'm going to show you how you can just make a single feather stitch by staying on one of the sides. So just like that, rather than going from side to side, you can just do a feather stitch like this. And then you can come back, you can add beads to the end of it. So I'll do one more. Now I'm going to end this stitch just like we did before. And now if I wanted a little bead on the end here, I'm just going to bring my needle up nice and close to the end of the stitch. Grab my bead, tuck it onto the needle, and take my needle down, just like that. So this is another alternative way to add beads to your embroidery when you are using the feather stitch. And you could do this with a stack of sequins. You could stack sequins and beads. There are just so many varieties of blends of things that you can do with this stitch. So this is a very pretty, this could be a great outline stitch. This is in the line stitches section of my book. And so you can see it does make a very pretty decorative line that you could use on the edge of applique that you can incorporate into your embroidery, which I'm going to be doing. And then one other option, I told you it's my favorite meandering stitch. So I'm going to start another stitch here. And I'm going to work my way over to the right. So I'm doing my first stitch exactly the same as I did all of the other stitches. Now, instead of bringing my needle down, actually, I'm going to draw 2 more lines. I'll draw 3 more lines. Okay. So now instead of going on to the other side, like I did for here, or instead of just staying on this side, like I did with this one, I'm going to continue working my way over. So instead of taking my needle down right here, I'm going to take it down a little further over in between those 2 lines that I drew. And then I'm going to come up on the other line that I drew. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm taking it over in between those 2 lines and bringing it up on the line. So the lines right now are just for me to show you how this looks. If you were actually stitching this on a piece, I would just let your stitches meander how they wanted to, working your way back. You can see that I'm just kind of following my lines. I don't draw the lines on a project when I'm letting this stitch meander. I might be following the pattern of a fabric. I might just be letting it meander around, make a nice vine shape that I'll add flowers to. You can see I'm just going back and forth, and letting this one wander. This is a really fun stitch for letting it wander like that. And I'm just working it the same exact way that I did the other 2 examples, just letting this one wander more. And then I'm going to finish it the same way by taking my needle down, just like that, and then winding my thread through. This version doesn't have any beads on it, so I'm just going to wind it through a few stitches and trim it off, just like that. The maidenhair stitch is a lot like the feather stitch. So if you feel comfortable working the feather stitch, then move on and practice the maidenhair stitch. I'm going to be starting this one exactly the same way, bringing my needle up, taking it over, and bringing it back up in the middle. So I'm always coming up in the middle and going down on the sides, wherever that side is going to be. Now with this stitch, instead of bringing my needle down a little lower on either side, I'm bringing it back up at the same level of these stitches and bringing my needle back up on the line. So although my side stitches are extending further, my middle row is staying the same and my needle is coming up in the same exact spot. And then my last stitch I'm going to bring down and then up again like that. Now on this side, I'm going to do the same thing, always catching the thread so that I don't take it all the way through. And now these stitches are all going to be at the same level. Just like that. So this is another great stitch if you're working a botanical pattern. You can see it just starts to look very decorative. You could add a row of beads on this. You could add a few beads to each one, and then you wouldn't have to worry about securing your beads if you're filling up each of these little wings with beads. They're just filling up nice and decorative, and you're adding lots of beads while working on a stitch. So then I'm finishing this one up just like that, and I'm going to take it down exactly the same way. So that's what your maidenhair stitch will look like. So we have the feather stitch with a bead in the center or on the wings, depending on how you want to add it. We have the single feather stitch with beads. We have a more meandering feather stitch, And we have the maidenhair stitch. So now I want to show you how I'm going to add them to my fabric that I'm working on. I wanted to show you some of the threads that I'm going to be using today. So this is by Wonderful Specialty Threads. This is the Elena, which is a wool thread. And these colors, I think every single one of these colors would actually match this project perfectly. I feel like this box is just this sheet alone is like the perfect fall set. So I am looking for a thread that is going to match this area right here. And that looks like the perfect match. So the Elena thread, what I love about this is it's a thinner thread. When compared with the Elena and the Eleganza is the yellow and the Elena is the brown. You can see this is a thicker Eleganza. This is the medium size pearl cotton, a size 5. This Elena is probably the size of a size 8 pearl cotton, maybe a teeny tiny bit thinner. What I love about it, and I really don't know if it's coming through on the video, because it's a wool thread, you have the little tiny wisps of texture that kind of come through when you're looking at the thread, which I absolutely adore. When I'm adding textures to a hoop or a project like this, if I have little wisps of texture from the thread, I just love that. And so this thread, you can either use it singly like this, or if you want it to show up a little bit more, you can stitch with it doubled up on your needle, which I also do sometimes. But I like it for projects like this, where I'm going to be adding kind of a heavier stitch. So the feather stitch and the maidenhair stitch both feel a little bit like thicker, more noticeable stitches, which I'm working in these areas right here today that are kind of cut off. I don't want those to be the focal point of this project. And so a thread like this is going to let me add stitching to this without it standing out. It's kind of just going to fade into the background, which is my goal with a project like this. If I didn't have any stitching at all, that would stand out as you looked at this. So I'm looking for threads and stitches that just kind of fade away. They're there, but they're not the noticeable pieces of this project. I'm focusing on this little area right here, and I'm going to be using the feather stitch. And I'm actually going to be stitching this way. We all know that these are leaves that are just cut off on the fabric. So I want to have a little bit of texture, but again, not emphasize anything on them. I also know that I'm going to be doing some stitches that are going to cover up this background area. So I don't want my stitches to come over onto that area. I'm going to keep them all on this part of the leaf. So I'm going to be working a stitch more like this single feather stitch and keeping all of the stitches on this side of the leaf. So I'm going to bring my needle up and I'm stitching it exactly how we stitched it before, only I don't have any lines drawn on my fabric. And instead I'm using the shape of the leaf as the line that I'm going to bring my feather stitch back to each time. So I'm just kind of following that stitch or following that line. So it's going to give this area a little bit of texture, but it's not going to be too much. Just like that. Now I've come to an area where it kind of juts out a little bit. So I'm going to end this stitch and then I'm going to start over again right here. Just like that. Super easy. You don't have to tie off your thread in between. I'm just carrying it a short little distance. And I'm going to continue all the way down this leaf. So here is the delicate little feather stitch along this area. And now I'm going to work the maidenhair stitch right in this section. And I think that this is the perfect color to match this leaf. Oh, I love this more than I thought I was going to. Like the delicateness of this Elena thread with the maidenhair stitch just gives it such beautiful, again, very delicate texture, which is great because I don't know what I'm doing with this whole hoop yet. I've got lots of stitches to add. I can come back in here at any point, add anything I want to the ends of it. Right now I'm leaving it because, again, I have a lot of stitches that we're going to be working through on this project. And so I want to just gauge what I'm using where. For now, little bits of delicate texture with the maidenhair stitch or the feather stitch are exactly what this project needed. Again, this was the Elena thread that I used. These are the Sue Spargo colors. And I have 2 different color palettes of those, and you are probably going to see them make an appearance with this project again because look at how great the colors are. They're just really perfect and great for our delicate stitches. Again, I hope you enjoyed the feather stitch and the maidenhair stitch. If you haven't started yet and you're really anxious to, pick a fabric that you love. That is the best place to start. It doesn't have to be huge. You can see that this is a small project that I'm working on, not anything overwhelming, and we will work through it stitch by stitch. So be sure to ask any questions in the comments. I will try and cover them, and I might even answer it next time on video. Get those needles out and happy stitching.